Hello everybody, this is NoodleDog. Today I'm going to be focusing on the coloring aspect of art. It's one of the final parts that you tend to do when it comes to drawing, but it's just as important as line art or sketches or anything like that. And I think that explaining my workflow might be a little bit easier than trying to go over a couple of different things, and maybe I can switch it up and do more than one color video, but I'm going to try to do my best to kind of explain what I do when it comes to coloring. Coloring, like I said before, is really important because a lot of times art pieces tend to be known and to be outspoken for their color. And depending on how you take your style on, if it's impressionist or abstract, or if you do things like you're following photorealism, there's a lot to color. And people don't usually associate color with I guess people do associate color with style, but in the sense that color can be kind of divisive, because you can color things however you want, and if you take artistic liberty, then that's fine too. But I'm gonna kind of show you guys how I color, and it's gonna just kind of go with that. But generally, when you start coloring has a lot to go with it, from basic flat coloring to rendering. There's a lot to go on, and you could do a lot of different things. We talked about color schemes and color theory before. There's a video you can check out. I'm going to put it in the little I box. Is going to pop up probably around right now, and it just kind of goes through color theory. But this is not color theory. This is actually coloring. There's some things to keep in mind when you're coloring, but the basics are super simple. You have a layer system here. Layers are really important, but the basic rule about layers is that everything stacks on top of each other like a cake. The bottom layer tends to have your undertones and everything like that. If you're into underpainting, that's where you put your underpainting and everything like that. And then you build on top and on top and on top and on top until you have your finished piece. That's the basic idea when it comes to coloring. So on the bottom layer here, I'm gonna do all my underpainting, or all my basic flat coloring. I'm also gonna merge these three layers here, 1, 2, 3, because I want all of my circles on the same page. They're uneven, but that's fine. So when I start coloring, at least, the first thing I do is I kind of want to figure out a color palette. Certain things when it comes to color palettes, like adjacent color schemes or complementary colors, these kind of things are really important to bringing out the vibe of a painting or a picture. So the first thing I do is I look at the colors that I'm interested in, and I decide which ones I want to use. So today I'm going to go with orange. Yeah, let's do that. I'm going to put it on the bottom here. Let's go with orange in this one. I don't know. Let's go one for my character. We're going to go blue on this one, and then we're going to go, let's go green on this one. Maybe not that green. Let's do another green. This one's better. Let's do that one. There we go. Like that. So I'm going to show 3 different types of ways to color in this. You don't have to do this, but this is usually what I tend to do. Now, you could do the most basic stuff when it comes to coloring. It doesn't really matter, but when I start coloring, I tend to, at least when I first started, I would use the ink tool, and I would just fill everything in. And you can change, of course, the size and just kind of go in. I also have a sensitivity thing on, and I just kind of go in with it like this. Now you can kind of be messy with this, because all you're going to do is go back and erase anyway. At least erase the this part right here, anything that's not exactly clean. And you can do whatever you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to be this way. This is how I started coloring. This is the most basic way to color. It's slow, but it does work, because you can get the most amount of control over what you want colored and what you don't want colored. You can erase, and you can also figure things out, because why not? Alright, it looks pretty clean. There are some spots I can fill in really quickly. Let me go ahead and do that. This one here, and then kind of do this and make it a little bit smaller and go back in. And that is the basic way to color. The next thing you could do, which is what I tend to do nowadays, though sometimes it can be a bit of a pain in the ass, is to fill. Fill tool is really useful, because if you have something that you know is enclosed, you can definitely fill it in with just a click of a button, and that just fills everything in. But sometimes it can be a problem, because if any part of the line art that you're using is open, it'll bleed out into things you may not want it to be colored. So sometimes I tend to put certain things together. So for instance, if it's a chest that I'm flat coloring, I might just keep parts of it open and the rest of it closed. So I just fill it, and then I go to move on to the hair and maybe the neck and so on and so forth to make it easier. And in this one, I don't use this one a whole lot, but I've seen people do it. You could take a selection pin, if I remember correctly, and you can kind of do this. Like you could, oh shoot. You can kind of just make it smaller. Let's make it a little bit smaller. You could kind of make a selection tool. I don't use this method because I have the other methods and I prefer them. But this one does exist too. It just kind of creates a mask over the area, and whatever you touch is available to be put in. It won't go anywhere outside of these lines. So as you can see, it works pretty well for its purposes, and it's kind of quick to do. But the cleanup can be a pain in the ass if you're not really careful. So of course I've got to clean this up. I might just leave it like this because it's just a basic demonstration. I don't have to do too much, but as you can see. Now, this is at the very bottom of the piece, so that pretty much means that everything that I'm going to draw is going to be on top of it. Now, when it comes to rendering and things like that, there are numerous amounts of things you could do, but I'll show you what I do when I do my rendering. So, there's a feature up here called lock transparency that pretty much just means that this particular layer, no matter what you do to it now, I could take this orange and I can move around, but it won't go anywhere off the page, or at least off the colored parts of the layer, because I'm locking everything to these particular colors. So as you can see, now it's moving over here, and I could do this. It's pretty useful. It's mainly used, and I mainly use it for doing things like fur texturing, or if I do anything like hair texturing, or if I want to do something unique or whatever. That tends to be the reason why I do it, or if I want to particularly blend in a particular layer. So you can do that. From here, there's a lot of things you could do, and depth and everything is also really important. So let's kind of go to the green one back again, and I'm going to kind of show you how I would do something like this. Now, making something a little bit more rounded is super simple. You could do cell shading like kind of thing. Cell shading pretty much just means that you're taking a color and you're kind of giving it like an edge, but you're not making it too you're making it a hard edge, but it's not necessarily a hard edge. Let me show you what I mean. I got the tool set up, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make a darker green. This is a darker green. I'm gonna go ahead and gently push it around like this. Now if you notice, this automatically gives this particular circle some type of texture, or not texture, volume. You can see that it's actually moving to a curve now, and it's a lot more varied in the overall volume. And I can go even further. I can actually take a lighter color and do like this and give it a rim shadow like this, and already you could see that it's kind of giving itself some type of volume and some type of spatial depth. So that's one way you can color and shade. This is really useful if you want to do something really simple, and if you just kind of want to make something varied, but you don't want to do something too extreme. I don't use this often unless I'm using something really simple like a comic. Comics tend to be a little bit easier to work with this because, of course, rendering every single panel is really a problem. It's annoying, but I digress. Okay, I'm going to move over to the orange here, and the next thing you can do is you can use an airbrush. Airbrushes are really super because they are very soft. You can change the opacity and everything like that in your tool settings, and you can kind of figure out things as you go from there. I tend to use them if I want something to gradient, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with a darker orange. Notice how I'm not using things like black or anything like that, because black can work as a shader, but it tends to muddy things and make things a little bit darker. So using a darker version of a color tends to work a little bit better. And sometimes, in certain cases, you can even change the color completely. Like for instance, this, well, not this green, but I'll actually get over to it over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making a gradient over here. As you can see, it's starting to give it a little bit of texture, but it's not as solid as this, and it gives it a more, I would say, a more natural thing. We can go even further and make another gradient down here. Give it more like that. As you can see, it's starting to gradient itself and it's starting to look a little bit more soft than this circle over here. Airbrush is really good for pretty much just making soft shading, but it can kind of also make hard lines too. If you turn up the opacity or the hardness, it can even get real hard, and you can see it's starting to actually get firm on the edge here, and it's starting to make it a little bit more similar to this, but on a less of a scale. So that's really useful for this. And then in the middle one, this is what I tend to do the most actually. I'm gonna actually go ahead and use this one. You can change the color and you can do a lot of things with a brush. I use a smooth flat brush, but I also have other brushes that I use too. Like I can find the brush. A lot of these brushes are Japanese because this is Clip Studio. Clip Studio is a Japanese software. This one here I really like, but I'll kind of go over what I do. I tend to do a mix of soft and hard because in painting, hard lines tend to denote a surface or a hard surface or a textured surface or whatever, while a soft thing goes to be a transition between planes. So, or you can do hard planes too. But let me go ahead and show you what I usually do. I'll use a smooth flat because I've been using this one a lot more recently. So for this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and make it a stark, just a flat like this, right? What's cool about brushes is that a lot of times the brushes in the studios that you use or the software you use may often have blending edges, so you could see it's got pressure sensitivity, so it's not necessarily going full as I go through. What I tend to do too is to mix the colors with any of these colors here, because the blending mode tends to leave some of the original color behind, so I can go back and even fix up some of this, right? Then I could take even more this color here, and I could just kind of go back in and adjust as I go, and this creates a much more varied and paint-like surface. From here you can do a little bit more. I could add a little bit more color, and I can go about it any kind of way I want. The possibilities are endless. This is just kind of how I prefer to go about it. As you can see, I'm kind of going in. I can do whatever I want, and the paint looks really interesting. And while I like these two styles, this one in the middle seems to be more of what I enjoy, but you can find your own ways to creating things too. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. Let's kind of bring everything back together, and let's kind of talk about other colors, because other colors are really important too. So if I erase all of this, I'm going to go back to where I was. Sometimes colors can be really interesting, and you can mix things up to make them really cool. So for instance, I want to add, I want to add like a little bit of light reflection. Colors are really good at accenting each other and making each other look interesting, especially if you add a different color that's not really the same color. Because a lot of times when you look at things, if you look at local color, there are a bunch of colors on one item that doesn't exactly mean that it's that color. So if I say a lemon is yellow, well, it might be a little bit yellow, but it might be a little bit more dark yellow in some places. It might actually have a little bit of a bluish tint and things like that. And you can do the same thing, as you could see here, with your brushes. You can give things a sort of interesting tint. If you've got a hard edge like a pen, you can kind of give it like a little shine. You can make things a little bit more, interesting like that. You can take the airbrush and add different colors. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Actually, what I'll do is I'll add this, because this is something over here, and you could see that you could change the surface of something just that quickly because you added all these extra colors and all these extra things. And you can do a lot and vary things just like this. I can go over here and do the same thing. Actually, I could take this color and make it a little bit lighter, and then I can do like this, and actually let me use my brush and go ahead and push this in. And while this, like I said, this is just a color thing, you could do literally whatever you want with color. It just depends on how you render and how everything works for you. You might just find that this may not be your style, but something else is. And that's cool. That happens all the time. Go ahead and finish this up here. Add a little bit of color so you can see where everything is coming from. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And I could even add a little bit of this to give it some rounding like that. I'll do the same thing with this one. Add a little bit of dark blue on the bottom to show it's got some type of, texture. Boom. And then over here, just kind of just do the same thing. And you could see that just that quickly, I've created new texture and new everything because I changed up a couple of things with the color. And that's pretty much how color works. There's not a whole lot to really learn. It's mastering how you see color in your world. Do you see color as, this interesting thing, or do you see colors as just regular? Because you could do either or. But as you can see, we've kind of made some marbles. Pretty cool. That's pretty much what color is. You can do a lot with it, but how you decide how to do it and how you decide to vary everything, that's what sets everything apart from your style to somebody else's. Color is really important, and if you don't feel like using color, you could always use black and white. It always works too. But that's pretty much the end of the video for this. If you liked the video and if you like me explaining, go ahead and subscribe. If you want to see more stuff on my channel, feel free to look around. There's a lot of stuff on my channel that I've done lately, and I hope everybody has a good day. It's late in the morning for me, but hopefully this has been a basic little tutorial. We might get more into rendering at another time, rendering rough textures and whatnot. But anyway, it's NoodleDog. See you later.